Hold the applause.
All right, cool. Welcome everyone to StarWest 2024. This is AI in Testing, a moderated panel. And I have the pleasure of moderating, these wonderful folks. If you guys have ever been to one of these before, you know kind of how I roll it is that there's nothing prepared. There's no pre-planned questions. There's no scripted answers. It's all just an authentic conversation around AI in testing. And I have the pleasure to have like some really awesome speakers here. Most of them anyway are really awesome speakers. And we're going to kick it off, right? So one of the things, we're going to just let the panelists introduce themselves, and then we will be taking questions from the live audience, right? So please feel free to think of your questions. If you had anything on your mind, now's the time to ask as we go through, right? So let me turn it over to Carlos. You want to introduce yourself and just kind of say a little bit also about like your talk here at StarWest and what you're going to be speaking on, or what you have spoken on for anyone else who has spoken before.
Sounds good. My name is Carlos Kidman. I'm a senior quality architect at Sequel. Before that, I was a director of engineering for an AI company called Quality AI. You probably saw them outside. And before that, I was in platform engineering at Adobe. I'm speaking about some tips on how you build LLM applications, because I do that quite often. And so I'm going to share some of the insights and things I've learned in building applications using AI. So yeah.
Great. I'm Jason Arbon. Oh no, a second.
I was like, that was weird.
There we go, confused. Jonathan Wright. So I'm a chief AI officer, I think now. I updated my LinkedIn profile the other day for fun. So I've been building Gen AI solutions the last few years. My talk is really about the lessons that are learned from building AI infused systems. And tomorrow, 9:45, I don't know when that is, maybe PM. Someone's at someone's door, and we could definitely answer that, is that I'm going to be talking about large action models, some of the new visualization of thought stuff, some of the vision models that then take it to the next level, and also kind of where Jason's talking about as well, and tweeting or
no, okay. My daughter
is
calling me, and she called 3 times to get through the block. She wants to have a sleepover with a friend on Friday.
Thank you for that.
Over to you.
All right.
All right, I'm Lisette Sunon, and I'm a principal and founder at Cisco Solution Inc. What I do is I work with a startup company into the DevOps strategy and try to see how to leverage artificial intelligence to reduce waste and increase efficiency. So I was talking yesterday and today. Today we talk about DevOps culture. That was the session that I just finished. And then yesterday I did a tutorial on KPI, how to create KPI, how to leverage KPI to make decision for your organization. So.
Awesome.
That sounds legit.
Jason?
Is this working?
Yes.
Okay, it feels so light.
It is very light. This is new technology.
Or I'm just strong.
AI generated.
Yeah, it feels like it. Yeah. Yeah. It's like a prop. Yeah, I'm Jason Arbon, and I'm a software tester nerd, and really been focused on figuring out how to apply AI to software testing problems last year. And having lunch with Jonathan and Bug and Tariq.
Yeah, for sure.
Part-time job.
All right. So I hope you got your questions. Now we're going to kind of turn it into the audience. I don't have any questions for the panel. I have left it and reserved it for all of you. Maybe I will reserve one question for the end, very, very end.
That sounds like a really lazy moderator.
Yeah. No, great lazy moderator approach. This is about the people. Come on in, right? Come on in. All right. So who has the first question? I will be running around getting my steps. So I'll go over here. Oh, you have the microphone sock that we can throw around. Okay.
I can talk with this? Oh, I don't know. It sounds like something. All right. So I've been in Tariq's class, and I've been in a number of Jason's classes, and I have yet to master prompting. But as I get better and better at that, what do I need that hall full of vendors for?
We avoided allowing people to it runs the risk that not everyone's JSON. And I think part of it, and we talked about prompt threading, prompt tuning, and I made a joke about the fact that everyone seems to be one-shotting. Like you said yesterday in your session, it's ChatGPT, right? The idea is you should be doing chains of messages, not sending one. If you look at markup language kind of mission statement format. But, part of it is it runs the risk that you're going to make a mistake. So taking that prompt engineering is great, but I think there's more evolution to come. We were kind of fighting around large action models, visualization of thought, what takes away a lot of that, and then how that's going to be evolving. And as we don't like the word AI agents, but you're going to see these agents that are taking on prompting threading to take away some of the complexity to then say to you, did you realize there was this anomaly, what happened in the backend system when you was running X? I keep on thinking it's like Dr. Watson, in the old Windows 3.11 days, right? You click it and go, oh, it's on fire or something. Instead of you having to prompt and expect to get the right response, it's more complicated. So it's nice that prompt engineering, but I think we're going to move and evolve past that quite quickly.
Did that vendor sound defensive?
I'm kidding. Maybe.
Now, and I should be talking about agents tomorrow in my presentation, because that's literally where you're going next. Hey, yo. Because yes, I love it. Hey, what else? No, just because you will take these smaller prompts, because the bigger your prompts gets, the worse the AI will start performing. And so you want to get these agents that are like little ones that are really good at specific tasks and working together to build more complicated, more robust and resilient applications. So I think that's exactly what you were talking about in terms of you have prompt engineering that'll get you so far, but then combining agents together will help you with that. And I think as the barrier to entry on those go lower, yeah, you have a very good point of a lot of what these vendors, don't hate me. Yeah, you might be able to start building yourself.
Just to answer quickly, I don't think everybody is gonna have the ability to, oh gosh.
No,
Yeah, it's a bug. I don't think everybody,
Remember when Obama was got out with chopsticks?
I don't think everybody want to have the ability to do prompt engineering and spend that much time. So some of those tool vendor will still be applicable, because we kind of sometimes QA folks live in a little bubble, of attending conference and going to training, but there's other folks that are probably in this room that still need such tools. So that would be my answer.
There's a fly landing on me. It's a bug. I should shave my head. Okay, Rick Kilkenny.
Yeah, I want you to
I
comment.
think you saw me hesitate when you asked, we were talking about the prompting stuff. I did point him to your blog post, by the way, for prompting.
He
But
took my course. It's fine.
yeah, well, he said he still has problems.
He said he also took your course.
But I think that the real answer is the vendor to worry about. It's not even the testers. It's so OpenAI had the release last week of the O1 stuff, and what it does is you ask the question, you put your prompt in, and then it goes off and it takes up 90 seconds to figure out what the answer is, right? Instead of just returning immediately. So it tries to think, right, with a kind of chain of thought. What's interesting is it looks like it's actually looking at your prompt and figuring out what you actually want to do. So it's actually reviewing, it gets the intent from you, and then it figures out what you probably really are asking, and then it goes nuts. So I feel like prompt engineering will actually kind of disappear soon, because the AI models themselves are getting, not only are they getting smarter, so they'll actually know what you want more than you want, more than you understand your intent, but they're deliberately looking at your prompt and then just improving it. And guess who's probably the best at improving the prompt? It's probably the LLM, right? So I think that's where things are going to go, where right now we have to be very precise and really engineer our prompts, but I think very soon it's like Google search. We could ask dumber and dumber queries and the right things still kept coming up. Same thing will happen with LLMs. So I think that's the long answer. But the AI will improve our prompts soon anyway. And like, for example, we talked about in the class, the key thing that we need with prompt engineering and stuff is to give it the context so it can actually answer the question. I think the other thing that's going to happen soon is the AIs are just going to say, hey, You asked me a stupid question. Right now, they just have to be nice and polite. They can say, that's a stupid question, and they're going to do precision questioning and say, hey, tell me about your specification. Tell me about what other test cases do you have, and to make you give a better prompt. If that makes sense, through interaction. But it's still early.
All right, other questions right here? Yes, you get the SOC. Speak into the SOC, please. Yes, you have to, people online, you have to speak into the.
Oh, okay, there is something in here. Oh, okay, I thought this was just like I thought it was just like the talking stick, you know, it's my turn to talk. Okay, so what I gathered from other sessions is, I think it was called the few shot concept or whatever. Instead of trying to put everything into your first prompt, as much information as possible, it's better to try it a few times, maybe add some details as you go, because if you give it too much at once, is that what opens it up to possible hallucinations and other kind of information that's maybe not correct?
All right, so I'll say one thing. I think like a big part of AI is recognizing that the machines are still kind of in a spot where as you start to interact with them, they're just interacting back. And in some cases, you're getting into a point where if you don't provide enough context, LLM being non-deterministic is going to spit out something that it thinks is the best answer for you, or maybe most likely. So what Jason was saying earlier about like being more precise or maybe giving more examples in a few short kind of scenario will help it to get towards guiding it or refining it towards what you want it to bring back to you. But again, even with this gentleman's comment on prompting, I think that in the future, it's just going to get way better at what it's doing. And it's going to rely less on us giving it more detailed information and actually be able to actually ask us the right questions. Right? And I think that that's where the future of this will go. And I honestly feel like, back to your question as well, many of those vendors won't be needed. Prompt engineering might not even be needed that much, right?
Exactly. And I'm going to reiterate Daoni from last year, right? So we got into this conversation, I think we all got a little bit stuck on vector databases, you know, things like Chroma, you know, how much context can we feed into it? Now, obviously, Jason's approach now is literally, models are so big, you can feed all of your repositories, all your requirements, all your bugs, all your test plans, all your previous historical runs, all your logs, all your report portal stats, whatever else it is, you could put it all into it and then aim to use it in the normal RAG statement, so a retrieval augmented generation. And that's okay. You know, where we've kind of moved is more into kind of graph RAG, which is in essence a model, domain knowledge model of your system. So you individually have unique systems, but also you overlay some basic principles that you do share the same, right? Because of your industry or your segment. So contextual awareness and giving it better, helping it not try and do these guesses of, well, is it 4 to 6 weeks delivery? It says, oh, on Confluence, it says 4 to 6 weeks, but actually in this Jira ticket, it says it should happen 4 to 5 weeks. Which one's right? Now, of course, Sam turned off the ability to tell you exactly where it found that information, because otherwise, as he said last week, 74% of the models were trained on illegal copyrighted material. When it would say, I stole from FTTP wherever the Harry Potter series, right, which has constructed my answers. But large language models will tell you audibly where it's actually created that response. So things, when you give it more contextual information, and yes, you can dump it into a RAG architecture really simple and pull down your own models, like local GPT or something like that, or private GPT. But I think you're going to see that the more clever models that are coming through for Sam's, what Sam's working on at OpenAI at the moment, what the Microsoft guys are working on, these things are going to get more and more evolved and more aware of your complexity, what you're looking on the screen at. You know, Aviator looks at what your reports you're going through and the open telemetry that sits underneath it. So they're going to start having these levels of abstraction. So it's going to get smarter. And therefore, you're not going to rely on, like you said, a few prompts versus a one-shot prompt to rule them all, right?
Can I turn that into inventing a question that I want to answer? You mentioned hallucination, right? And I think actually, I'm not pretending it's inventing. I think it's kind of the core of your concern is, does this model have enough data to answer correctly, right? And not hallucinate or make stuff up. I think, so, not even what I think. So hallucination was a crazy problem when like the early versions, like a 3.5 and stuff like that of GPT and stuff. Hallucination was a big problem. But if you think of it, so I'll cut to the chase. People were complaining about it, and I got tired of it. I don't see as many hallucinations anymore, partly because I'm probably prompting it well, right? Because I'm just working with it all day in and day out. My prompts are getting better. But the funny thing is that I even have examples. I have examples from a tutorial last year that was making fun of you, Tariq, and the models don't hallucinate anymore. I use them as a demo. I asked, what have been Tariq King's major contributions to AI and software testing in the 90s? And then it used to say it would make stuff up, right? This year, if you use GPT-4o or O1, it says, sorry, Tariq has not accomplished anything at all. Kind of.
Fact, right?
Ever, yeah. But kind of true. Try the prompt. But I did this. I'm not an academic, right? So I won't pretend to do that. But I looked up all these old papers because I don't think it's happening anymore. I looked up a bunch of old academic papers from Berkeley, Stanford, and stuff that were showing examples of hallucination from about a year ago. And guess what I did? Because I'm a tester, a freaking tester. I tested it again. I did a regression pass and to see if they're fixed or not. And guess what? I could not reproduce a hallucination from 3 separate academic papers that were people got PhDs finding these hallucinations, and I could not repro them today, but I can repro them on simpler models. So the big thing, a lot of testing is like the one concern testers have is a fear of this hallucination getting wrong or bad information. As these are getting smarter, they're hallucinating far, far less. I think orders of magnitude less, but I haven't seen any academic papers measuring or quantifying that today. So that's the thing. Hallucinations are getting far, far better, and with good prompting, I really rarely ever see hallucination, which is.
I can agree on that. And what I did was when Llama came out, I went and because sometimes as a tester, I like to test different version of it and just see the result exactly and see the result. And I realized that earlier I would get very crazy hallucination, but now it gives you a straight up answer, which I feel so. For me, that's how I know that this version is getting better than the previous version. So,
So in my experience, who's used Cursor so far? I use Cursor like every day. Do you know what I'm talking about? Oh, snap.
Yeah.
No, Cursor is in like this. It's the VS Code basically with AI built into it and all that good stuff. Anybody? Okay, sweet. So anyway, so I use that, and I'm using it every single day, which by default uses 3.5 Sonnet from Anthropic, but you can switch to 4.0. You can use any model you really want to. I do agree. I have not seen hallucinations, but it definitely does mess up still. And all I need to do is basically tweak the prompts I'm giving it, or tweak, they call them a notepad, which is basically like, here's information about my project you should be aware of as you're doing stuff. Because if I tell it, like, I want you, I'm using SQLite in this app, and I now want to do this for models that put into my database, it'll always put it in SQLite. But if I then open a new thing to prompt it, I want to add a new model to my database, it'll be like, yeah, for sure, I can do that. And it starts spinning up ChromaDB. And I'm like, oh, hold on, I'm not a ChromaDB app, I'm using SQLite. And it goes, oh, my bad. And then it puts it all back into SQLite. So it's not that it's hallucinating, but it is definitely not precise. It does actually be like, oh yeah, I can give you something, and it'll make up what framework I'm using instead of giving me the one that I'm actually using. But that's just a prompt engineering problem, because I just need to give it the context of anytime you're making changes to my database, be aware that we're using SQLite, this version, and then it stops hallucinating at that point.
Yeah, that's really good. Like, yeah, so it's back to what you were saying. It was a great question. It was a great, actually, holistic question about AI and testing and all this thing is that it's how do you give it the right context? You have to know the right context to give it. Like a example, like you're saying, like you just give it more data, right? More context, and it usually gets it right. Like a classic testing example we talked about in the tutorial yesterday was if you ask it for Selenium code, like testers get upset, say, give me some Java Selenium code to test whatever, right? And what happens if it uses an API that, and you've downloaded Selenium 4.0, right? Or for example, if you don't tell it if it doesn't know your Selenium version or your Python version or your Java version, it might give you old calls or old outdated API invocations. But the AI is trying to be nice and you didn't tell it. It's kind of your fault. You didn't tell it what version you wanted. So you might get code that's incompatible with your local version, but it didn't know. It doesn't ask today. I think it will soon ask today. But like you were saying, if you just give it the right information, you get wrong answers, but sometimes you really goes, it's just my prompting or I didn't give enough context, I think is the root cause of most of my errors these days. And the things are supposedly like over 100, maybe 120 IQ now. I'm seeing when it reasons with itself, it catches its own errors and it asks itself, is this significant? Is this the right version? What version should I be on? What's the right library? What's the current version? You see its chain of thought doing that now. So again, back to the original question too, is I think prompting is a skill, but it's going to be far less interesting and important a skill in the near future as AI just fixes it for you.
All right, so I do have a question at this point. So one of the things that I noticed, and I agree with everyone here on the hallucinations.
We should
right?
disagree somehow.
We will disagree, I'm pretty sure. But one of the things that I noticed in your versions is that it is becoming harder and harder to override behavior. So I'll give examples, right? Back in the early days when this first came out, of course, we know some of the earlier models let you do whatever. It would answer any question. You could do whatever. It would never tell you that this is copyright, this is this. As time has progressed and as newer versions have come, things like that have been harder and harder to bypass. Of course, there's still neat ways to bypass some of these things, right? By clever prompting around. But what I've noticed, especially with, memory checkpoints and all these things, whenever I try to, which is a security issue, I understand, whenever I try to override behavior these days, it's almost like the model has become more stubborn. It like ignores I said, from now on.
Because it's
act
smarter
like
than
this.
you, Tariq.
It might be smarter
Knows
than me.
better.
But my question to you all is, what do you all think of that? And does that actually present some significant challenges for us moving forward when we start to think about either responsible AI or the point of view that AI might have and the powers that be that might control that? Thoughts? I know, I'm very intelligent. Thank you.
Well, you
Don't let Jonathan answer first.
go for it.
Jason.
Yes. I think, yeah, it's right. It is. I actually genuinely, I'm joking around, but I genuinely think it's hard. Sometimes the AI is not doing what we ask it to do because it thinks it does know better. One example, like, I was actually using, well, there's like some funny anecdotes, but generally speaking, so I found that also one trick I use, it's a mechanical trick, but I put more of the things that are most important to my call, like things that really need to be done right or need to be very assertive on, I put them in the system prompt call now. I didn't used to have to use the system prompt, but I forget the name, but I put it in the second system prompt. So it respects, there's two prompts. When you just prompt with the UI, like you're like the lowest level of priority. There's like the overall system prompt that the LLM has that has to obey. Like it can't tell you about dangerous things, for example, right? It shouldn't. But there's a way to actually add your context into that kind of a system level prompt. What is it called? I always forget what that
It's system
param.
level.
Anyway, yeah. So I can move some of my logic from there, but I found this, and this is funny. I think it's funny, but it's very practical, is I always still I tell it it's embarrassing. I tell it I'm its boss, and I say, if you don't return JSON, if you return any other text other than pure, perfectly formatted JSON that parses well on Python version, whatever, that's it. I'm no tolerance for any error. I'll fire you. And that's what I tell it. At the end of every prompt, look at my Python code in that laptop, and every prompt string has that crap at the end of it. I threaten to fire it. And now it really starts to pay attention. And so I haven't had that problem anymore. It started creeping up.
See,
But-
I'm always very nice to the AI, just in case one day
Yeah.
Me too.
we're on the other end of the food chain.
Well, I used to be meaner.
Any other thoughts?
So I don't use ChatGPT for obvious reasons, many obvious reasons. But you know, part of it is what you can see. Things like Minstrel of experts models, right? They're completely different when it comes to safeguarding, right? To more of the Llama kind of public-based ones that you all use, like Gemini, the smaller models. But then if you go up to like a 42 billion, or you go something quite high, to me, it seems to be, because they're trying to align with things like the European AI Act and the executive order, there's safeguarding and built in, but there's less safeguarding in some of the more obscure models, which you've seen happen in the past. Now, if you're bringing those models down, they're a little bit better, a bit more sensitive, but definitely Llama and a few other ones are much more regulated. I think it's also a disclaimer thing where they don't want to give you responses that can cause harm or potentially bring down your system or be liability, because there's a question around sharing IP with public-facing GPTs, and people go, "Oh, well, that's fine because I'm running GPT in Azure." Okay, well, that's fine, but what's your safety and auditing around that to make sure people aren't sharing material that's it shouldn't be used?
So let me get, you're working, you're totally right.
Yeah.
And I think you touched on the right answer here, which is, how does it relate to safety or responsible kind of AI? But the funny thing is, we've got all these, like, the commercial versions are like super restrictive, right? They don't want to get in trouble, but like, you can Google for all this stuff. The stuff they block in GPT, you can just Google for. It's bizarre. Like, and you can still access to the dark web, that's where I met Tariq. And so, like, we had, business dealing. And, but what's going to do, I think what's actually going to have a negative effect. So because they're so restrictive right now, and they're getting more restrictive, people are going to go to the open models, or even in the US, I've been tempted to use the Chinese models for some stuff because, they're differently restrictive. But particularly the open models, you can control that, I think there's not the right word. I know it's system prompt. There's another one. Anyway, but you can change the system prompt, right, in those. So you can have unfettered access to a full LLM, and these are pretty smart things. So basically, there'll be an underground of LLMs that people actually really use, and then it's like dumbed down for the masses, but it's not. The bad guys aren't going to use the commercial LLMs, is what I'm saying. Yeah. So it's kind of pointless, and it causes a lot of problems and jumping through hoops. But really, it's a charade, because they just want to, they want to make the regulators think that they care, so they don't get sued later. It's all commercial. They just want to delay the time that they're sued, and delay the government intervention long enough that they can make enough money, that they have enough lawyers, that it doesn't matter. We know this. But it's just charades in the near terms. And that data, if they index the data and they have the data, it's already available somewhere. The problem only is when it gets intelligent. So when it gets to an IQ of 150, right, we won't know what it's doing. We won't know if it's lying to us. That's where I think the real issue is. It's not copyright or any of these other things. Sorry, I'm talking too long. But I think this is the really important point is that it's the intelligence is the problem. It's not the data. It's not the copyright. It's not all this other crap. Is it smart enough to deduce these things on its own? Can it figure out how to create new biochemical problems or new forms of fusion or something like that, or radioactive pollution? That's where it's dangerous. So other stuff is just charades.
All right, let's go back to the audience for the next question. I got one here. We're going to have to give some love to the back, so I want someone in the back next. Let me just grab this.
All right, I think you touched on something to go, which has to do with ownership of information and ownership of data. And I think that's important to discuss, particularly the impacts that has on AI in general, but specifically who owns the information that is generated by AIs, who owns the information that is consumed by AIs, and what sort of liability do companies intentionally or inadvertently open themselves up to by allowing AI's unfettered access to their data? And furthermore, and this is sort of nebulous at this point, but do we risk actually breaking the internet by having information wars where people are either publishing completely inaccurate information in an attempt to sabotage other people's AIs, or completely locking down all of their information behind firewalls because they don't want people stealing it?
I just want to say one thing. This problem can only be solved. It's called Google. Like literally, the case law is already figured out. Like it's why people think it's a different, this is different is not. What does Google do? They surface the content of third-party pages for a living, right? And there's a little weird law, and I had to deal with this at one point in my life. The interesting thing is there's this little law, I forget the name of the thing. That's why I'm hanging out with Tariq all day. But is, sorry, but there's this law. Basically, if you add value to that art, if you take a piece of art or whatever it is, a work of some information, there's the cool thing is if you add value to that, it becomes a new piece, a new work of art or a new piece of information. It's new. Almost every information, all information is derivative, frankly, right? Like I went to school and learned a bunch of stuff, and that's why I know half of what I do today. I learned it from somebody else. But specifically, Google already does this. They regurgitate other people's content, monetize it. People complain, but what they do is they say, "Oh, we're just going to give you a snippet of that data." Right? We're not going to show you the whole web page. We show you a snippet. The most important, actually, the answer, so you don't have to click through to the page. But because they do that, the word is transformative. It's a transformative act to add that value. There's even transformative to take, if you have 10 things, 10 facts, if you order them in the correct order, like 10 blue links and put them in the right order, that is a transformative act. So all this information, people are worried about LLMs, all the case laws, my opinion is, it's already been figured out, it's already been solved. So back to you, is the internet break? Guess what happens today? People generate misinformation and they try to do SEO to screw the engines over, and the engines take all the money. The newspapers are struggling, and people put stuff behind firewalls. It's already happened, is what I'm trying to say. I think it's the same old, it's just a different formatting of the data, which is a transformative value add, which makes it, those responses from the prompts are unique new IP. So I think they're actually fine. A lot of it's just a dance. And the reason they're paying off the people, the digital rights owners right now, is just to delay, and distract, and look over here, and we're trying to be nice. But it's already solved case.
But Jason, real quick. So do you not think though that with LLMs and with this technology and with AI, that the scale at which this accelerates will be just multiplied?
Google indexes the internet.
Sure, but there's something bigger than the internet, no? So for example, you train all these models on the internet, right? And now these models are generative models that can spit out derivatives, transformatives, whatever you want to call them. The explosion, I'm just asking a legit question. Do you feel like the scale is going to play a factor in? I mean, everyone is worried about IP, who owns this. I agree with you. Those things exist today.
Yeah. How did you learn how to add two numbers?
I learned how to add two numbers.
So the traceability of the IP is actually impossible. The only thing that really ever works is if it's exact quoted strings of that original piece of art, or exact pixel representations, essentially, of that piece of original information. And I can tell you, all it takes is a little transformation. In fact, the funny thing is, I would argue this, is the actual only value is in that transformative work, because it wouldn't have been discovered in the first place. And now, which is actually happening, what are these LLM companies doing? Half the training data is generated by the LLM. They're already done with us. They've scraped the internet, trained it, and they're using derivative data. You know why they're using derivative data? Because they own that. So the next model that comes out, guess what it is? That's why they're buying their time. I shouldn't say this, probably.
Probably not.
But they're training on their own output right now, which people think, oh, that's dangerous. That's going to be like you're teaching yourself. Well, there's an intelligence value added on top, but it cleans up the data, right? Summarizes the data so that the AI is smarter, better, more focused. But But the key thing here, sorry, I'll say it, is that that's now proprietary data. So OpenAI's 4.0 version creates proprietary data for them to train the next revs of their engines on. So next year, the argument, watch, you'll see, the argument with all these lawsuits, they'll stop paying the artist. They'll probably, because they'll say, oh, we don't train on your work anymore. We train on our data. And it's a transformative art. So I think that's what's really going on. But this is all, I think it was all case law solved with Google.
I was actually going to mention a lot of what people like Angie Jones is doing with
All
Web5
hail
and blockchain.
Angie. We miss her, by the way.
I'm just saying that that's the entire purpose of what Web5 and blockchain is trying to solve, is decentralizing it. Because then you're actually signing things and saying, this is a piece that I own or this entity owns. So it's, and if you're interested, I would say, Angie, follow her, check it out, because that is literally what they're trying to solve.
I mean, I would say it's an interesting point, right? Coming from like a research background, even thinking about what Jason mentioned, normally, like if you're going to publish a research paper, and ironically, everything that he said was actually quite accurate, amazingly today, is that your research paper just had to add 33% of something different to be published. The other thing
That's how you did it.
also directly relates is that putting together things in a non-trivial way still counts as a value add. So I think there's a lot of stuff there, but let's get another question. Anyone in the back, like the people who are allergic to the panelists, let's get them speaking. Yes, right here. Orange, yes. Yeah, we need the sock down here. Can we run the sock down? Anyone?
Can I ask a question
Oh,
too?
you have it.
Yeah.
Oh, you have the sock here.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll go here and then we'll go down.
Anna's
here
got the sock.
Okay. So I'm sure you heard about the Moore's law, so the doubling of the transistors on a circuit that improves the performance of computers. Do you think there's something similar for AI, considering that even though machine learning has been there for a long time, I think since the 40s or 50s, and we have seen a machine learning winter. Now, obviously, the last few years, crazy improvements, but do you think that's going to continue on?
Yeah, so this is an easy one to answer, right? So obviously 16 Pro Max has got an NPU in it, neural processing unit. My other Surface device does 40 trillion operations per second at the edge. Edge NPU is the way most devices are going to be powered, right? Why would you push this stuff anywhere but you're locally onto your device, right? And I was using some of the Apple Intelligence stuff, which is basic, right? On the flight over here, completely offline, no internet, using the compute power on the edge. And I think we're going to use more and more of this. We've already seen like Google with they've put their entire medical doctor into the Fitbit app into an 8 gig model, which will run on the NPU. So even though Moore's law feels like it's a limitation, and I think the NPU shift away is going to really mean that people can use devices like the gentleman there typing on his M3 processor. That's going to have lots of availability to run things locally. So it'll mitigate the whole reliance on CUDA architecture and.
No, it's not what I meant. Not if Moore's law would be a limitation, but if you think similar to Moore's law, there will be there is a lot of machine learning, considering that there has been a winter before. Do you think it's going to continue to grow exponentially like we're seeing now, or do you think it's going to be a winter?
It's linear. So that's the whole point, is people think that a subset of NLU being natural generating content is only a subset of machine learning. Machine learning's been at the same angle minus the 80s, right? So, it feels like it's new, but it's not. It's only it's a subset of a subset, and it's pretty small. And yes, it's exciting for us, but I wouldn't say that it's going to be subjected to that. I think the perception that somebody put down, which I'm going to won't say the person who it was, but general intelligence is 8 years away. Turing was talking about this in 1950. We ain't going anywhere near general intelligence or super intelligence anytime soon, right? So it's craziness.
Jonathan is not right here.
My surname's right, but not my prediction here. He says general intelligence next year.
I think general intelligence is probably here already. They just haven't told us yet, but
It's probably super close.
no. So, well, let me just say, I just do have something to say on this. I don't think that we've been linear. I think that there was definitely a little bit of an exponential dip there, especially with deep learning and a lot of those advances. Do agree AI is more in natural language processing or natural language understanding and generation. But I believe that as we start to see that we continue to go like this, and I remember seeing like a video just related to like the IQ of the GPTs, which is growing at this rapid rate. At some point, it'll be so smart, right, that thinking about it exponentially growing or not will probably not even make a difference, because we're talking about going beyond human intelligence. And I think once we get beyond human intelligence for us, you know, if we continue to invest in models to become even exponentially smarter than the next model or growing up like that, I think the bigger challenge is, what are we doing with those models, and how are we controlling and regulating those models? Because now we have something that is smarter than us humans for the first time. And I actually believe that like we are there somewhere, and it's on lockdown, but we are there somewhere. Because if I look at everyone who's saying and has been saying, oh, it's fit in the next 5 years or the next 8 years, like when I met Jason, like those were the numbers that we were stating. And we didn't see GPT coming, but once that transformer architecture hit and things started to go that way, it went like from, not to use, zero to hero, like in no time. It felt like it's like gradually, and then suddenly it's here. So I think that sure, it'll continue to grow like this, but I don't know if we'll keep tracking to even know if it's exponential or linear.
So are you saying that there's more to it than we know of?
Sure.
Okay.
I mean, I don't, I mean, okay, think about ChatGPT and its release, right?
Yes.
There was a subset of people who were using this and testing it, unfortunately not testing it very well, but they were testing it beforehand. Where are we right now? We're in development of GPT-5, right? Like, what does that actually look like? Multimodal features were here when 4 came out, but they didn't release the multimodal features, but it existed because they needed to probably test it more or do whatever. So who knows where we are right now? But it has to be better than where we are today. And where we are today is pretty darn high. So I don't know if it matters exponential or linear, but if there's something smarter than us now, then we better be thinking about how we're going to figure out how to control it. Because in the wrong hands, this could be detrimental. So we don't want to give Jason that model.
I don't want me to have it.
All right. Another question. I think I don't see my orange. I think maybe she had to leave. Okay. Anyone else? We have some more time here. Oh, don't
My
talk.
submission for next year is Chris.
Right here.
Hi. So quick background, super new to all this. About 3 weeks ago, literally, watched an hour and a half talk on this from Masterclass, and it really opened my eyes to really dive into this. It's a lot about the prompting, giving it context, being very explicit about formatting, how you want it to give you everything. And so I guess two-part question, is that kind of like a good feel for like how to grow with like collaborating with this tool? And then second part of the question, do you guys recommend bouncing between models and like different ones, like as I'm this early in my like journey, or just stick with one, try it out, and then once I have more? So yeah, just.
Hey, are you a tester? Yeah. Okay, so if you're a tester, approach it with a tester mind. That's the best approach. Use all of them, and as you are using it, you make some realization about which one, even to switch between model. I do that too, because my tester mind just make me, I can go in and I'm trying to do one thing, and because of the prompt that I give, I realize that, okay, the answer is not good enough. Let me go to another model. So use it as a tester, because that's how you're gonna figure out the best approach for you, you know. But I love that you asked that question, because again, we feel like we are in a bubble that everybody is so super advanced with this tool, but most people are either literally learning about it, you know, or on the sideline skeptical. So it's good that you ask and continue trying to use it to your best of ability.
Yeah, you're literally ahead of like 80% of the testers out there just by doing that. So well done. Seriously.
That was a perfect answer.
Just because I mean, the fact that you're actually trying and you're asking these questions, you're going through courses, like that's what everyone should be doing. And there's so many like free courses and content out there that's like, why aren't you taking something like that? And then yeah, you'll find that one model is really good at one thing, another one's really good at another thing. That's literally what we have to do when we're building these applications. Is we're saying for each agent in my system, oh, Sonae is better here. Oh, 3.5 is better here. Oh, and you're trying to pick the best model for the job. You won't know how to do that unless you're actually testing all of them out and seeing which one performs better for you. So yeah, I would say give them a try, and anything that's free, I'd run the same prompt inside of it and see which one gives you better answers.
All right, more questions? Right here.
And mine's more, I mean, we've been kind of going into deep stuff, but mine's a little bit more on the basic side. Right now, I'm not paying for any of the latest and greatest. I'm just using GPT, which I think maybe is at 3.5 or whatever. I think it goes based on information up to 2022. So if I upgrade to whatever the latest and greatest is, first part of my question is, well, I guess, does it have access to the internet? If I'm asking a question and the best answer is something off the internet that's maybe not in the LLM, does it go out and, and look at Google or whatever?
Yes.
Okay, and then the other, yeah, that's a good, quick answer. And that's the paid version. But then I've also heard people talk about your sensitive information, your domain information, or that information from your company. If I, for example, put in a bunch of documents because I'm trying to generate requirements or whatever, and maybe I accidentally put some confidential stuff in or whatever, does it, yeah, I mean, this is just, hypothetical. Yeah, hypothetical. They don't give me access to that information. But if people put that in, does that on the paid model, the latest and greatest, does that automatically become part of the LLM that everybody else has access to?
The answer is no, it doesn't. But I would definitely check with your team first, just to make sure like what you're doing is okay.
So it doesn't become part of the LLM, but what it does do is that you're sending it over the wire to OpenAI, and they can use that if you're using that public API to help improve their products, right? So one big point here that everyone should know, and normally with what I've been working on, a lot of the first steps for people is to really make sure you have enterprise-ready, secure AI, right? Which means that there should be some sort of secure proxy at your organization, and you should have scalable models that are actually within your firewall if you're going to be using it or if you want to protect your sensitive information, right? I would still be very careful, but if you're using like Microsoft's Azure OpenAI, right, and you're doing that, that is your instance. Nothing is getting used. Nothing is getting sent to the public API of OpenAI. Nothing can be used to improve Microsoft products or OpenAI products, etc. And it's a better way to kind of start off. So that should be like step 0, where you're making sure that these things, hypothetical things that you mentioned, sir, never happen. All right. Cool.
Yeah, and so just to add on to that one, so like I say, I don't use GPT. It's like I might get a T-shirt saying I don't use GPT, right? But something like LLM Studio, right? If LLM Studio is completely free, it works on any laptop architecture. You can pull whichever model you want to down and start using it. It's completely local. It's on your machine. It runs on any kind of hardware. You don't need dedicated hardware. It's free. It allows you to play around with those different models. Like the one that I'm using at the moment is the Pixtral model, which just came out last week, which is a vision model at the front of it, i.e. you can pass in images. So it's the omni capabilities, what you're talking about with GPT-4o, but with the capability of running everything locally. So you can choose which one and which flavor, but you can do it in a secure way. You know, I would definitely not use ChatGPT for anything IP sensitive.
So here's just to clarify with the question. Let's say somebody, obviously not me, comes out through, using, you know, ChatGPT or Copilot, whatever it is, ends up coming up with a brilliant solution for something or a cure for cancer just by, you know, using the prompts and getting information and using their own mind to create a cure for cancer. And it's, well, you said it doesn't become part of the model. So that solution or that cure doesn't instantly become part of the things that other
No,
people can
it's-
access.
Yeah, if you read the terms or EULA, whatever it is, yeah, you actually as a user own the output and all the rights for the output from the model. If you do the prompt, the output is yours. You own it. I think it's actually a smart defensible thing for them. So they don't want to own it, actually. But yeah, my understanding is, last I've seen the terms, you own you own all that output. It's yours. Yeah. And they do not want, I think they do not want to own that output because they don't want liability from it.
All right, let's get one more audience question, and then I have a final question. Let's get here. Make them fight over it. Just throw it in the middle. And then,
Yeah, let's see that.
darn, okay, all right.
Thanks for the interesting questions and then information. The question I
You gotta
have.
project a little bit, or I can repeat the question, it's fine.
Okay. Yeah. The question which I have is like, how is that we can evaluate once we start using the AI models? And if I have to invest on the AI, and what is the like best thing like to start with on the QA side as a initial thing, and then how do we can evolve, and then what kind of checklist we should adopt, and then how can we evaluate after some time this is going good and this is doing whatever I'm asking for, or it is going beyond what I'm asking for, and how is that like a limitation or the restriction we should think of at a given point of time, like it's like 3 months time or 6 months time. And because when we see about Java is something, it's a language, we give the intelligence to the Java or the C# something to do our business task or something. But when it comes to the AI, it will think of its own and then help us to get our activities to be done. So there is a difference between that. We know about this code. If developer gives this code, okay, let me put the breakpoint, or analysis give the different types of test data, he goes over it with the dev and QA. But when it goes to the AI, it's more like you are trying to see where it goes wrong, and but how we should evolve and then have kind of a checklist.
You should come to my presentation tomorrow. Come to my presentation tomorrow.
Go to Carlos's presentation.
Talking about observability and stuff and evals. Yes.
Yeah,
Come to
let
my
me
presentation.
just say one thing here first for you. Number one, when you're approaching all of this, right? Always think problem first and then solution. You're using AI, or if you want to use AI to solve a problem, what is that problem, right? Because you're asking, well, how can I evaluate the models? How can I evaluate this and that, next and third? All of that is going to be evaluating relative to the problem and the use cases that you have, right? So even before embarking on that, you start to say, well, this is what might be most valuable for me to use AI with. Like whenever we do POCs, this is a key part of thinking through, like, hey, what are your pain points? And is AI a good solution for you to do this? Is it migrating from one framework to another and you want to be AI assisted? There's different models, as you know, that give different output. There's the prompt aspect of it, and people need to be upskilled on the prompt engineering. All of that needs to fit together. So you need to first start thinking about, what are my goals? How am I going to evaluate success as I start to go through this POC? What are the metrics that can help support what I'm doing? And understanding that there's a number of variables as you go through this kind of transition or this journey, where at certain points, even though like the AI is doing more of this generative work, typically someone is gonna, be checking, at least for now, the outputs of the AI and making sure that that is all integrated and running smoothly. Whether or not you actually got gains from this really goes back to the beginning problem and the beginning question, where you had some area that you felt AI could help you with. And clearly the ROI is directly related to how well AI is actually able to help you solve this problem. The only way that you can kind of compare is if you're actually doing this just using a purely manual or non-AI approach and comparing it to the AI-assisted or AI-generated particular aspect of it.
Sorry, time's up.
Sure, sorry. Time is not up.
Wasn't me too.
I'm good, I know, don't worry. He's just,
Students,
he just,
Write something for it, but the picture is all about like some person is missing a train, but it can say train is coming, person is walking. You never know what the AI will generate, but the objective is like person is like missing the train. That was the situation, but it looks.
okay, so you mean how to test the actual AI model for correctness, completeness, etc.? Is that what you're saying? Okay, so this is a very hard problem in general. And actually image generation and these types of things are actually even a harder problem than some of the pure things. But this is where the testing community really can shine, right? Because there's a number of different ways to kind of do fuzzier testing. That's the thing about AI. It's not necessarily like a yes or no, right or wrong. One easy way that you can start to test these models is to actually take multiple models, ask them the same question and see if there's some level of consistency or outliers, right? Also compare it to human oracle. So people are
Attend Carlos's session.
Yeah. People are using people are actually
Carlos Kidman tomorrow.
all
What
right,
time?
one
11
second.
a.m.
1 second.
11 a.m.
All right, 1 second for the plugs. People are using LLMs to help evaluate other LLMs, right? So one can kind of be the judge and the other
But
one
who-
the generator, right?
You're suggesting people use AI to test AI?
Yes, I am.
What?
And then also
You okay
use
with
humans, because use
It
both.
wasn't last year.
Yeah, this is interesting.
It's a
This
new
is
Tariq.
interesting.
What did I do?
What the tables have
All
turned or
right,
whatever.
here's my last question, because we have to wrap up, right, Senor? We have 2 more minutes. My last question for you all, right, or really request, not really a question. What are some parting words that you have for the folks here? I mean, we've seen folks who are just kind of starting on their journey. There's a lot of people who might be AI curious, AI first, AI augmented. I don't know where the inflection points are anymore because there were so many inflection points. But any final words of advice? And we're going to start with Carlos and go down.
I say do exactly what this gentleman over here is doing. I think just being the AI curious and just coming things like this and asking questions, searching these things. So a lot of these tools are free. A lot of the courses are free as well. Yeah, I would just start jumping into it and just seeing how can you use it. And instead of being like, okay, I think I'm way better and smarter than this thing, it's probably smarter than you are. And it's just almost like stuck in a box, and you have to figure out, how do I unleash this thing to really help me out? And if you use it well, it's such a productivity boost. It's such a helpful thing to get you even thinking different ideas. Like it's such a powerful thing to use. So start trying it out. Don't be afraid of it. Be curious about it.
Jonathan?
Yeah, good advice. Definitely use it for AI productivity uses. So throughout your day, emails, responses, whatever else you do, start using it practically and validating that you're adding value and saving time. Obviously mentioned the LLM Studio. You don't use ChatGPT, which I know is going to get controversial. And then, we're going to be drinking at the bar at 7 o'clock, aren't we, at the lounge bar, right? So if you want to geek out later with Jason, me, I know you're disappearing, or the rest of us, then we're happy to continue the conversation then. So, come and see us. Come and see Jason.
All right. Lisa?
I'm gonna go with what he said. It was not you, but it was interesting. A couple of weeks ago, they had a whole thing on TV with Oprah and AI future. I don't know if you guys got a chance to watch it. I didn't because I don't live in the state, but I saw it on YouTube. But for me, it was heartwarming because we've been coming to this conference and talking about AI for years. So that's when I came to the realization that we live in a bubble here from our community, and we tend to have a very deep conversation, which is fine. But there are also some people that need the basic high level. So be curious, use it as a productivity tool. If you are a tester, use it for yourself first, and then try to go to your organization and figure out how you can leverage it. And I love the answer that Tariq gave to the gentleman over there, because that is look at it as a problem. What problem do you have, and what solution are you trying to do? And for me, when I talk to organization, I always look at it as how are you going to use it to reduce waste? You know, what are the things that you're doing repetitively, and how are you going to use it for it? So that's the way that I want AI to shine in my life. Thank
All
you.
right, Jason.
Actually, I like the AI shine in your life thing. That's pretty cool.
That's the new slogan.
You just cleared my cache. Yeah, I think there's a lot of questions about how to learn and ramp. I think Tariq had really good advice on that. I just buzzed him out.
Yeah, one compliment out of 100 from this guy.
And it was reluctant too, you could tell.
Yeah.
But the weird thing I think is, it's like the original question we started with earlier was, like what to learn. This is the theme of the question, right, of this panel, is how do I get started? How do I learn? What should I learn? I think a very meta thing to think about is, I'll be very meta, is that if you try now, it's really hard. I know there's gotta be a better analogy, but like, if you try now, it's gonna be difficult. It's painful. It's painful, sorry. But if you wait like a year, it'll be a whole heck of a lot easier. Even 6 months, it'll be easier. Like I was saying, the prompts they'll start fixing your prompts for you. And there's billions of dollars being spent on making these things easier and better and smarter while you sleep, right? So if you want to, I would say there's not if you don't feel the emotional urgency to dive in today, I would also relax a little bit, because it will get easier to learn later and to apply later as everyone else figures out. And the vendors figured out. We were joking about the vendors earlier. Guess what they're doing? They're desperately figuring out how to make AI useful for you every day, right? And so, and that's a tough spot to be in, but that's what they do for a living. So if you wait a year, the tools are better, like all tools, the LLMs, the tools that apply it, our testing infrastructure will be better. So I don't think it's something like, if you don't really figure it out now, it's not make or break for your career or anything. I think you need to be open to it. But if you're smart, you may actually wait a little bit, depending on your urgency, internal level of feeling, like your curiosity, back to the curiosity. If you're really curious, dive into it now and eat it up, right? But you'll be frustrated because people that start like 6 months or a year from now will have an easier time. But that's also how technology progresses. So I don't think it's an urgent thing, like it's make or break to figure it out now. And if you just chill a little bit, AI will just creep up and emerge in a lot of the things that you do. So that'll be fine. But you can start now, but it's a lot of ambiguity. Like we don't give a consistent answer of how to get started. Yeah. And really, actually, Tariq, yours was the second best answer. Yours was the best,
Awesome.
Which was approach it from a testing mindset, right? Which is be curious, skeptical, poke around, try to understand, try to learn. Now I sound like Michael Bolton. But test it, treat it like it's a testing problem and understand it. Trying to figure out what it can be useful and find out what it's not useful.
Okay, time up. All right.
You just
I had to get him back,
buzzed.
right?